and benefits, and people like you in your £2.5 million house will be thinking, yeah, why don't we go after that person there, that disabled person with a car? Why are you coming after me and my £2.5 million house? So it isn't off-piste, is it? It's very, very relevant to this conversation, because that's what you've ended up believing.
But at the end of the day, what you should be doing as well, they should be doing checks to see if everyone actually needs all of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We shouldn't be talking about people in £2.5 million houses paying a few grand a year. We should be talking about disabled people in cars.
In moments like this, you can see the entire political story of modern Britain play out in a single breath. A budget is announced, and almost instantly, the airwaves fill with people demanding world-class public services while insisting someone else should foot the bill. Pause. If you believe the path forward is built on progress, fairness, and actually funding the country we all rely on, hit that subscribe button. Let's strengthen this community and make it the sharpest pro-democracy voice on YouTube. Now let's get into it. Yesterday's UK budget laid out how the government plans to spend the nation's money. But almost before the Chancellor sat down, parts of the media were already turning public frustration into profit, amplifying grievance instead of accountability. And here's the pattern you'll recognize immediately. People who want Scandinavian-level services, but still expect to pay US-style taxes. It's a contradiction so common it barely surprises us anymore. And right on cue comes Rob, a man living in a $2 million home, convinced that being asked to contribute a little more is some kind of punishment. It's a familiar psychological tell. When people benefit from a system that quietly lifts them upward, they often forget the collective investment that made that comfort possible. And when the bill arrives, they look for someone else to hand it to. Here's what this moment really exposes. The instinct to point downward, never upward. To protect privilege rather than protect the social contract. And the question becomes, who does Rob think should pay instead? Beat. Let's hear it together, and then we'll break down what's really going on beneath the surface.
You know, people raking up leaves, working in the cold, whether it's roofers, road workers, etc. and stuff like that. So I actually fit into that category. I come from a council house. My wife comes from a council house as well. And we've worked since the age of 16 extremely hard, 6 days a week, to provide for our family. We also live in a house that's well over £2 million. And obviously this mansion tax is a huge worry for us, because obviously we put all of our money and savings, etc., renovations and so on into this property that we'd like to hand down to our children. And at the same time, I think it's a little bit unfair that we're going to be taxed on something. One, I've paid a huge amount of tax in as I've gone along, and two, I've come from nothing. So it's not as if I'm sitting around doing any, not working hard, not out on the street, etc. and stuff like that. So just, as I say, I mean, that's where I feel it's a little bit unfair.
I don't really understand which bit of your biography you think should exclude you from this tax.
Well, the fact that why should I be penalised for work? So what does it say to someone who so if you want to achieve things in life, what does it say to someone that if you get to a certain point you have to pay more tax?
Well, you already do. We already live in that society. That's what tax thresholds do on income tax.
And I get that, and I think they should be putting up income tax. I think they should be keeping an eye on what they spend on welfare. Yeah. Keeping an eye on how much, if are people actually entitled to mobility cards, etc. and stuff like that, rather than just wasting money. I know we're going a little bit off piece here, but
we are and we're not, because you don't arrive at opinions like that by accident. You could turn on the laziest phone-in host in the world and he'll be talking about mobility and benefits, and people like you in your £2.5 million house will be thinking, yeah, why don't we go after that person there, that disabled person with a car? Why are you coming after me and my £2.5 million house? So it isn't off-piste, is it? It's very, very relevant to this conversation, because that's what you've ended up believing.
But at the end of the day, what you should be doing as well, they should be doing checks to see if everyone actually needs all of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We shouldn't be talking about people in £2.5 million houses paying a few grand a year. We should be talking about disabled people in cars.
So, but what I'm saying to you, when
I know what you're saying to me. I'm listening to every word, Rob.
But what I'm saying is, when I started off, I was in the council house, and I've tried.
And if you were still there, you wouldn't have to pay a mansion tax. But you're not. So what?
But that makes all you're doing is is completely one-sided.
What do you mean it's completely one-sided? I'm going to get hit with it. I'm going to get hit with it as well. We're on the same side. We're both going to be able to do our patriotic duty and plug some of the holes caused by ludicrous political decisions over the last 14 years.
Absolutely, but at the same time, the government needs to turn around and say, right, well, where can we save money?
Let's go after more disabled people.
No, it's not. So again, that's
the one you came up with, Rob. That's the one you reached for first,
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that
yeah,
you need to be more careful. You need to be more.
Well,
careful
I've got good news for you. I've got good news for you. BMW and Audi cars are going to be removed from the car scheme for disabled.
Absolutely, because I was with someone at the weekend and they said that the amount of money that is wasted on these is just astronomical.
Yeah, but it's the same amount of money, regardless of whether you drive a tiny car or a big car. It's the allowance that you get that you choose to put towards whatever car you want. How is that wasted?
Putting up mansion tax, how much is that going to raise? It's going to probably
about
raise
400 million,
maybe.
Yeah, that's what they hope. Million.
Whereas I'd rather pay a little bit more tax and it be distributed correctly.
But not to disable people with cars, though.
Sorry?
Not to disable people with cars.
No, I'd rather it be if they need it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So why do you think that story in the last 6 months has become so big, Rob?
Because
12 months ago, you never gave it a second thought. What do you think has happened in the last 6 months that has made with regards to the Motability scheme? It's made a nice bloke like you think that the reason why I shouldn't have to pay a mansion tax is all these disabled people driving around in cars that they don't deserve. How do you think that happened, mate?
It's not just that, is it?
That's the first thing you raised when you rang this programme.
If you let me speak for 1 second.
If you answer the question that I've asked, how do you think that happened?
With regards to, because obviously it's been publicly made, people are being made aware of it.
By whom?
More often. By everyone.
No, not by everyone. By whom?
It's common knowledge that there's a lot of people on benefits.
Wasn't talked about 12 months ago. What has happened? Why is it the first thing you reach for? Robin Rickmansworth, looking for reasons why he shouldn't pay tax on his £2.5 million house, is talking about disabled people in Motability vehicles. How has that happened?
You've missed the point completely.
Of course I have, Rob.
You've missed the point completely.
Well, remind me what it is.
What I was saying to you was that when I started working, we had nothing. We've worked extremely hard.
I heard all that. Okay? That's not a point. That's a biography. I'll wait for it to be published.
Why should we be penalised?
Why should I be penalised?
Why should we be penalised when the
disabled people are driving around in cars
isn't being utilised correctly?
Oh, that's a different. No, that's not what you're saying. You're saying you shouldn't pay it because you've worked hard and you grew up in a council house. And I'm saying, what's that got to do with the price of eggs?
I'm saying the money, the tax as well. Okay, that I've no problem in paying more income tax. No problem at all. I think that's the way it should be done. More income tax, clever spending on welfare. Cut the welfare slightly.
Which bits, mate?
Sorry?
Which bits?
Again, it's not. I'm not down to that to make that. And I know you're going to say, "Well, you made that accusation," but at the same time, I just think it needs to be.
I know you do. I know you do, and you're not alone. And loads of people think that they shouldn't be paying more tax. And fair play to you for thinking you should be paying more income tax, but that goes on welfare as well, and that goes on Motability. And with the greatest of respect, if I was having a phone in about whether or not you should pay more income tax, you might be ringing me to tell me that you'd happily pay a mansion tax, but you don't think you should be paying more income tax. We've got no way of pinning that down. But listen to yourself. And I say this with love. The idea that the financial plight of this country is caused by people in Motability vehicles, people on universal credit or asylum seekers in hotels is absolutely ridiculous. But it has been very deliberately, very carefully and very successfully seeded in the minds of perfectly decent people like you. And it goes hand in hand. The reason why the rhetoric is so attractive is because we think it lets us off the hook. We somehow think that it will make us better off to resist these kind of ideas, but it doesn't. It really doesn't make us better. The only thing that makes us better off is a proper redistribution of wealth. And that involves going after the people who own the newspapers and who buy the television stations and who punt the rhetoric that has got you complaining about the Motability scheme in the context of a conversation about paying $2 or $3 grand a year for the privilege of living in one of the most expensive houses in the country. And that's the end of my TED.
So there it is, distilled perfectly. That single call isn't just a disagreement. It's the template we're going to hear repeated on loop for the next 72 hours. And then, right on schedule, the conversation will pivot back to migrants, because the cycle always moves toward whatever distraction keeps people from looking at the real culprits. Pause. And here's the truth. It wouldn't have mattered what Rachel Reeves announced yesterday. The numbers could be flawless, the policy airtight, and for people like Rob, and for the segments of the right-wing media that feed this narrative, it would never be enough. Because the point isn't the budget. The point is to ensure responsibility always lands on someone else's shoulders. Let's be real. These stories always start with the same emotional softening. The biography, the hardships, the humble beginnings. Rob talks about growing up in a council house and working hard. And yes, those facts matter. But listen closely. The story is used as a shield, a way to disguise the uncomfortable reality. His wealth didn't primarily come from sweat or graft. It came from a property market so distorted that simply existing within it became a financial windfall. That's not failure or shame, but it is structural advantage. And advantage often breeds denial. Then comes the core hypocrisy. Rob is the walking illustration of the Scandinavian services with American taxes paradox. He benefits from a country that stabilized his investment, protected his neighborhood, maintained his local services, and helped grow the value of his home, yet cries penalty the moment he's asked to give a fraction back to help sustain the very system that enriched him. And here's the psychological read. Rob didn't craft this argument himself. He didn't sit down and study public finance or economic justice. He downloaded this worldview, the headlines, the talking points, the fear cues, all pre-packaged by a media ecosystem that thrives on resentment. Because resentment sells far better than responsibility. And that's what this moment really exposes. At its core, this whole exchange shows how powerful the media machine has become. It pumps out stories day and night that convince ordinary people that Britain's financial problems can be solved by cracking down on disabled drivers instead of holding the powerful to account. Pause. Rob hasn't reached that conclusion on his own. He's been guided to look down at the weakest rather than up at the billionaires, newspaper owners and broadcasters shaping the narrative. And that's why his claim about being willing to pay more income tax collapses so quickly. Within seconds, he's calling for welfare cuts. It's performative generosity with a predictable escape route. This is the real pattern James exposes. The vulnerable are always the easiest targets, and grievance is always the easiest fuel. It's the same script we see after every budget. Resentment weaponized to protect those who already have the most. In the end, this wasn't just a critique of one caller. It was a warning about a political culture that keeps redirecting anger downward instead of toward the systems that actually hold the cards.